Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Zoom meeting and another podcast episode. If you're listening on the podcast or if you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about the podcast, our meetings, getting involved, paid private mentoring with myself if it interests you on the website. It's www.acimwithkeith.com. Right, so let's get on with today's meeting. And I wanted to build on what we've been talking about in our last two podcasts. And we were talking about how all things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment. No exceptions. If that is true, if the Course is telling us the truth, we get no option other than total surrender to what is. You don't get to judge it. You don't get to have an opinion on it, a judgment of it. It is what is. And it's all things working together for good. So we talked about that in terms of the world. And let's say 2 meetings ago, we really masterclassed that. In the last meeting, we talked about it in terms of whatever your brother does, he's right. He's right because he is already beingness and the Holy Spirit. He's already I am. And whatever's happening at the level of the dream, at the level of form, whatever he's doing is purely for you to undo sin, guilt, and fear that's coming up in your mind, judgment that's coming up in your mind, which is your judgment of yourself, because there's only one of us here. So at all times, everything is working together for good. There are no exceptions to that. No exceptions. Underline it, highlight it. There are no exceptions. Everything is happening for your good. Always. No exceptions. Always. That's where forgiveness has to start. That's where forgiveness has to start. Because the trap everyone falls into is, oh my God, I'm such an upset ego, and look what the world's after doing to me, and how do I forgive it? Okay, no. You have to switch the purpose of the world. All things are working together for good. You have to surrender to what is. Now, the beauty of that surrender is that there is nothing to your imagined separate self identity, your self concept, your ego, other than seeking and resisting, grasping and grievances, special love and special hate. There is nothing to your separate self identity other than a war with the present moment, other than judgment. If there is no judgment there, if all things, as the Course says, let all things be exactly as they are. If you're allowing all things to be exactly as they are, there is no ego there. There is no separate self there. In the Course in Miracles, it says, how does the Son of God awaken from the dream? It is a dream of judgment. So must he judge not, and he will awaken. You are, I am. It seems like I am is mixed up with an ego thought system. And now it seems like there is an ego here, a separate self, thinking the ego thought system thoughts. That self doesn't exist. The thought that there is a thinker of the ego's thoughts arises with every thought. It's another thought. There's no one there. There's no one there. If you go looking in your mind, you'll find thoughts. Go looking for the one who's thinking. Tumbleweed. There's nothing there. There's no one there. But there is what's looking. And what's looking by definition isn't a thinker. It is witness to all thoughts, but touched by none of them. It's outside of thoughts. This is the holy instant. This is the truth of who you are. It's shining in your mind now as the knowledge and experience I am. You may be overlooking it to apparently mix yourself up with ego thoughts and think, I am this, I am that, but you're not. You're I am. In the psychotherapy, it says, what he does not realize and needs to learn is that this self that can attack and be attacked again as well is a concept he made up out of thoughts and out of the thought that there's someone thinking them. There's no one there. That's the holy instant. Which means there's no one there thinking. Which means there's no one there to be sick. There's no one there to die. There's no one there to be guilty. And the clear seeing of that is the undoing of the imaginary sin, guilt, and fear in our mind. As one mind, we made up suffering. We made up sin, guilt, and fear to prove there is someone here who can be guilty, sinful, and fearful. It was made up to prove there was someone here who could be sinful, guilty, and fearful. But there's no one there because the separation from God never happened. And so if you look in your mind, you'll find sin, guilt, and fear where you put it. But it doesn't apply to anyone. Again, you'll find the sin, you'll find the guilt, you'll find the fear. You will not find the one who is sinful, guilty, or fearful. It's a delusion. It's a self-concept. It's an idea of a self being there that's never there and can't be found. In the holy instant, you are what looks for the sinful, guilty, fearful one and can't find it. And by definition, there's no sin, guilt, or fear in what's looking. That's the holy instant. That's the miracle. There's a whole load of thoughts happening in your mind. None of that's you. It's an ego thought system. No one's thinking it. Doesn't mean anything. There is no individual there having those thoughts. They're just happening. And when you are identified with thoughts, you can't know who you are. You cannot know the presence that you are in the Holy Spirit, which is the presence everyone is. The dimension of beingness is not available to you. It is veiled by identification with thoughts that are not real thoughts, that no one is thinking, that do not exist and mean nothing. We're not demonizing thought. What we're saying is thought is nothing. It's not sinful, it's not wicked, it's not evil, it's not any of those things. It's much less than that. It's nothing. Absolutely nothing. And yet, Descartes made his famous statement, which rather than being a universal truth is the universal error. I think, therefore I am. But there is an I am here, untouched by thinking. And that's what you are now. You already are the light of the world. In the Course, it says, Jesus says, you are the light of the world with me. Now, in this moment, you just think you're thinking. Thoughts that don't mean anything, that have no value, that no one is thinking, that do not exist and mean nothing, as Lesson 52 says. But what happens when you accept the Holy Spirit's unified purpose for the world? You've no thoughts about it. It is what is. It is for the purpose of forgiveness, which means the world is exactly as it should be. There may be sin, guilt, and fear coming up in my mind. Great, because that's what the world is for. I just have to Realize lesson number one tells me the world doesn't mean anything. It has no meaning. None. Lesson number two, I've given it all the meaning it has. This thing which has no meaning at all, I've made a meaning up for it, which is chaos, which is the ego thought system. So what we're doing with the holy instant, what we're doing with forgiveness is we are unmixing who you are as I am outside of concepts from thought. That's it. Because it's not you. Yes, you are deluded that you are the one thinking and that these thoughts make a powerful contribution to the truth. That's not true. Those thoughts are nothing. No one is thinking them. The self you think is thinking them is a story in your mind. It's a concept you've made up. There's no one there. You are what sees this. And what sees this is outside of all thoughts and concepts. So how do I unmix my beingness, my amness? How do I unmix that from thoughts I think I'm thinking? Remember, the Course tells me the thoughts I only think I think, I'm not really thinking. They're not real thoughts. They don't exist, and they mean absolutely nothing. And when I think they're true, and when I think I'm thinking them, that is the self I've made out of thought that does not exist. All suffering arises on behalf of a self-concept, a self that doesn't exist. There's no one there. And all I have to do is be the witness to thoughts with no judgment of them and no thoughts about them. And what's witnessing? That's who you are. This awareness outside of thoughts. This awareness thoughts cannot touch and where no thinking is going on. Thinkings are happening. Thinking is happening. It's not happening here. That's who you are. That's the I am that you are right now. You only have to unmix yourself from thoughts. The minute you do what you're told in the Course and you shift the purpose of the world is no longer supposed to be any certain way my ego wants it to be. That's gone. Course in Miracles says, I've given everything I see all the meaning it has for me. And A Course in Miracles says, yeah, throw every last one of them out and replace it with this. All of it's for forgiveness. If you're serious about waking up, you shift the purpose of the world now. Everything is for forgiveness. That's what it's for. I don't care what it is. It's for forgiveness. It's not right or wrong, good or bad, holy or unholy. No, it's not. You have to throw that out. That keeps you trapped thinking you're thinking you're a self that doesn't exist, suffering, seeking and resisting desperately to try and solve the problem of your inadequacy and lack and your terror of death. You throw it out. The world has one purpose. I'm going to look at it, this thing that means nothing, and sin, guilt, and fear is going to light up my mind. In the past, I would have said the world is doing that to me. Now the world is for forgiveness. The world was never doing it to me. Now the world's going to happen. It means nothing. My mind's going to light up with sin, guilt, and fear. And my ego's going to speak first and go, they did it to me. Look what the world's done. Okay? And I catch that. And I realize, no, the world is showing me what's already in my mind. If the world has no meaning, and as you look on the meaningless and your mind lights up with hatred, terror, fear, judgment, that's not in the world. That's in your mind. That's about you. And you made the world so you didn't have to look at it in you. That was the purpose of the world. So we, as the one mind, made up this terror and fear and hatred and sin and guilt. We made all this up to prove there really is a separate self here. And then we made up the world so we could keep it, but see it in someone else. There's no one else. There's no one else. Because there's only one mind here. You are the dreamer of the dream, not the dream character you think you are. So it's incredibly important we shift the world's purpose, because what you have to do now is you have to surrender to all things working together for good, because it has this unified purpose under the Holy Spirit. Under the ego, the world is here to make you happy and it's going to be just around the corner. And if you just keep chasing after the next goal, lasting happiness will finally happen for you. And then when it doesn't, it's like chase the next moving goalpost, chase the next moving goalpost until imaginary death. So that's with the ego as your teacher, the separate self-identity. With the Holy Spirit as your teacher, that's all gone. You know, if you want to do manifestation, go read The Secret, because A Course in Miracles is not about that. Course in Miracles says everything you desire can and will hurt you. Why? It acknowledges that there is a lack in you, and it seeks to fill the lack in the world at a future calendar date, which will be your salvation. So the sole purpose of this imaginary voice in your head that you think is you is to keep you out of the present moment where God is. That's its purpose. And so even if you're seeking your salvation through A Course in Miracles in the future, that's the ego. As the Course says, atonement can be equated with a total lack of interest in, a total escape from the past and a total lack of interest in the future. Heaven is here. There's nowhere else. Heaven is now. There's no other time. What happens to thoughts if there's no interest in the past? There's a total escape from it and there's no interest in the future? There's none. But there is the beingness of the Holy Spirit, which is the one identity of everything. It's here. You might be overlooking it to mix yourself with thoughts and think you're something that doesn't exist, the separate self, suffering and blaming. But that's delusion. You already are the light of the world. You already are I am. A self-concept is I am this. I am an innocent victim. I'm a person with a terrible past. That's self-concept. It's nonsense. You are I am, period. Salvation can be seen as nothing more than the escape from concepts. Unmix yourself from thoughts. That's it. Separateness is the tiny mad idea. It's a thought. Unmix yourself from thoughts. There's no separateness. There's no one here to be separate. What looks out is everywhere here and here everywhere. Without identification with thoughts, there is no self apart from all that is. That's the real world. So let's take some quotes. Okay, this is chapter 29. And let's see which section it's in. Yeah, section 6, forgiveness and the end of time. This world will bind your feet and tie your hands and kill your body, only if you think that it was made to crucify God's Son. Again, A Course in Miracles can be so misunderstood by people who think they're bodies and think they are a separate self and think that the Course is talking to them as an imaginary dream figure that they're not. Course in Miracles is never talking to the dream figure, it's talking to the dreamer of the dream. Wherever these words are heard now, they are addressed to the dreamer of the dream that's you. There are no dream figures, including the one that you think you are. So you could easily take a statement like this and think, if you change your mind about the world being for crucifying God's Son, that nothing can tie your hands and nothing can kill your body. That's not what this is saying. Whatever's going to happen to the body is going to happen to the body. What does that have to do with you? That's what this is saying. This world will bind your feet and tie your hands and kill your body only if you think it was made to crucify God's Son. For even though it was a dream of death, that this happens in the dream, even though you, the dreamer of the dream, dreamt this dream of death, you need not let it stand for this to you. Let this be changed, and nothing in the world but must be changed as well. For nothing here but is defined as what you see it for. The world doesn't mean anything. It only means whatever you decide it means. So if there's a condition of the body that the world calls sick, you can say, I am sick if you think you're a body. If you think the world can crucify God's Son. It can't, because you're not a body. And you are God's Son. Even though it was a dream of death that you're dreaming, but you're not in it. You need not let it stand for this to you. Let it be changed, and nothing in the world must be changed as well. Nothing in the world must be changed as well. Which is to say that the same images are there, but they mean something completely different. So the condition of the body, what other people are doing, I can interpret that and say, oh, that means I'm an innocent victim. That means this is causing my pain. I can do that. I can equally throw that interpretation out and go, this is happening. So the sin, guilt, and the fear in my mind comes up, and I can learn that I'm not a body and that I'm invulnerable, that I'm the light of the world, that I'm pure beingness itself, the one beingness that's appearing as everything and everyone without ever ceasing to be itself. The world doesn't mean anything. It's whatever you decide it means. What you have decided is chaos. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's right, some of it's wrong, some of it shouldn't be happening. I need to protest it. I need to do something about it. I need to resist it. I need to hold resentments and grievances about it. I need to go grasping after things that I hope will sort of finally be the answer to my happiness. And of course, Miracles is going, no, stop all of that. Happiness is here. Stop the seeking and resisting. Let all things be exactly as they are. Course in Miracles says, shut the hell up. God is here. It doesn't actually say that. What it actually says is, the miracle comes quietly into the mind that stops an instant and is still. Because there's recognition here that my identity has nothing to do with thoughts. It is rooted in beingness. And thoughts can't touch here. Death can't touch here. Separateness can't touch here. And it's already what I am. The only problem I have is that I think I'm thinking. But there's no one there thinking. For even though it was a dream of death, famine, war, politics, family drama, body condition, even though it was a dream of death, all of that exactly as it is, you need not let it stand for this to you. You've decided what that means. It doesn't mean anything. You've decided what it means, so you can be an innocent victim. You can change that. Let this be changed, and nothing in the world but must be changed as well, for nothing here but is defined as what you see it for. The Course says, seek not to change the world. Choose to change your mind about the world. The world doesn't have to be changed. You have to change what it means. And what it means is, here's an opportunity to look at the sin, guilt, and fear coming up in my mind so it can be undone. I just have to not blame the world. I have to see that the world is doing its job under the Holy Spirit's unification of purpose. I might be looking at a brother and feeling hatred, but that image of a body is not my brother. And what the body's doing is not my brother, because my brother is I am. The same I am, I am. And so the hatred coming up in my mind is self-hatred. The world is showing me this. I didn't know it was here. I didn't know this hatred was here. Super. Now it's not unconscious anymore. I thought it was in my brother. It's not. I thought it was in the world somewhere. There's nothing in the world. Nothing in the world means anything. Nothing in bodies means anything. It's a dream. But it's in my mind. Great. That's where I look at the sin, guilt, and fear in my own mind, because it's not in the world. There's nothing in the world. And so I sit here within the sin, guilt, and fear that we made up as one mind to prove that separateness was real. And I don't have thoughts about it. Don't tell myself stories about it. I don't judge it. And I experience what I am outside of thoughts, outside of a self-concept. Pure presence. An awareness where there's no thinking going on. It's aware of thinking. It's not thinking. That's who you are in the Holy Spirit. Now, in this moment, right now. You might be mixed up with thoughts. You can unmix yourself from thoughts and know yourself as this presence outside of thoughts. There's no self-concept here. This is how you come with wholly empty hands onto your God. It's already what you are. It's shining in your mind now. Even as you're listening to these words, that part of your mind knows the truth of them. And your thoughts might try and define it and turn it into a concept and start comparing it. That's all nonsense. You can just feel and sense the beingness that's here as the truth of who you are in behind thoughts. So don't try and do anything. Just notice who you are. You don't have to even get rid of thoughts. You just have to see that they're happening all by themselves. They have nothing to do with you. There's no one thinking them. You are what's here in the holy instant. Witness to thoughts, utterly untouched by them, and having no thoughts about them. Okay, next paragraph. How lovely is the world whose purpose is forgiveness of God's Son. How free from fear, how filled with blessing and with happiness. What a joyous thing it is to dwell a little while in such a happy place. This is the world where there's war, famine, starvation, where the body appears to be falling apart, where it doesn't have the same mobility that it used to have, where there's arguments and problems and all these things going on in life. How lovely is this world? When I don't decide, oh, the world's a terrible place because I can't be happy as an ego, and instead go, how wonderful is all of this? Because it's showing me the sin, guilt, and fear in my mind so it can be undone and I can remember what I am in God. Again, this is not about being a holy ego and out there fixing the world and being a miracle worker and emptying the hospitals and the cemeteries and it's all fabulous and everyone thinks I'm great and holy and I think I'm great and holy. Crap. That's not what this is saying. What would you be doing fiddling with illusions for? You shift the purpose of illusions. And all of them are healed and holy by their purpose. No matter what they are. Nothing is good or bad. Everything is what is and assisting me with remembering what I am. Nothing is sick or well. The minute I shift the purpose of everything, Nothing is sick or well. It's exactly as it should be. So I can practice forgiveness. Whatever fear is coming up in my mind can be undone and remember who I am. How lovely is the world you're already living in, whose purpose is forgiveness of God's Son, instead of the crazy, chaotic purpose that you've insisted on giving to it, but that you can now let go of. This is total surrender. The world is already lovely. It is already healed and holy now by its purpose. So surrender to it as what's perfect. Total surrender. And that separates you out from thoughts. The identity of I am is known independent of the thoughts it seemed to be mixed up with. And there is a felt presence here, and a wholeness, and a peace that are attributes of the truth of who you are in the Holy Spirit. So a terrific way of understanding forgiveness is surrender. Total surrender. Total surrender to what the world is doing. No matter what. It's already perfect, healed, whole, and lovely by its purpose, which is whatever emotions are coming up in your mind, you now get to undo them and remember God. You don't get to argue with the world anymore. I mean, you can, and you'll suffer miserably over it and try to make other people suffer from it. Okay, you can do that. So if you want to keep suffering, keep arguing with the world. Keep saying it's not healed and holy. Keep saying it should not be thus. Keep saying, oh, this is the reason for my unhappiness. I can't believe it. Should never have happened. People shouldn't behave like that. That's not the right thing to do. No, no, no. So do that if you want to suffer a little bit more until you're ready for the end of suffering. Because the end of suffering is it should be thus. Everything exactly as it is right now in this moment is healed and holy by its purpose. When I choose the Holy Spirit as my teacher instead of the insane voice talking to itself. Now it's perfect. No matter what. Because what's coming up in my mind that my ego wants me to believe is because of what's happening in the world, but the world doesn't mean anything, so it's just what's in my mind. I get to heal it by allowing it. So I surrender to what's happening in the world. It should be happening, but I'm left with all this suffering. Yeah, but that was there anyway. That was here before what happened. So the first thing I do is the world should be doing exactly what it's doing. But now there's still suffering here. Yeah. The world was made to hide the suffering, to hide the guilt and the self-hatred and the inadequacy and the fear that's here. But the minute you say the world is perfect, it's healed and holy, I don't need to seek to change it. I just needed to change my mind about it. It is my means of awakening. It is my means of salvation. Great. That's the second shield of oblivion gone. Now, let's look at the first shield of oblivion, the sin, guilt, and fear that you made up. Super. Be with it. Don't judge it. Surrender to it. Only surrendering to the insane voice that's not you, and the sin, guilt, and fear that you made up, and it's not you either. Only in the surrendering to it, in no fighting of it, in no trying to fix it, only in total surrender of it, does the truth of your beingness outside of thoughts and the Holy Spirit light up your mind. Do you break free of thought identification? There is something here witness to thoughts and sin, guilt, and fear coming up, and it's outside of it. It is witness to it, but not touched by it. And this, what I am in the Holy Spirit, it simultaneously completely allows and surrenders to the thought, sin, guilt, and fear that's coming up. And by this allowing, it simultaneously undoes it. Because with this, surrender is not something my identity in the Holy Spirit is doing. Surrender, which is the cessation of the egos seeking and resisting and holding grievances, the cessation of that is the end of what is shielding what is already here, that is wide open, surrendered, peaceful awareness in the Holy Spirit, pure beingness, what I am outside of concept. All that's hiding it is a grievance with the world. And the unified purpose abolishes that grievance. The world is perfect. There's still awfulness here, but the world was perfect to show me this awfulness so I can undo it forever. So now I surrender to the awfulness, and the light of being is here. The awareness outside of thoughts that I am in the Holy Spirit is here, shining on the sin, guilt, and fear and dissolving it. Only total surrender brings me home to the truth of what I am as this beingness, which is the same beingness everything and everyone else is. Only believing thoughts makes it seem like I'm a separate self and there's other separate selves. This beingness that's here outside of thoughts is the beingness that's everywhere I look. It's appearing as a dream, which means nothing, and it's still this beingness in the Holy Spirit. That's what we're doing with forgiveness. That's the two shields of oblivion, made up suffering and a made up world to keep the suffering, because the suffering is proof I am a separate self. So I want to keep the suffering that proves I'm separate, and I want to make up a world that I can blame for the suffering and not myself. Now I have something external to hate instead of hating myself for the suffering of choosing separateness. So the unified purpose of the Holy Spirit, everything is healed and holy now by its purpose. Nothing is sick or wrong or bad. Everything is already perfect now. For all this awfulness that I made up to come up in my mind, and all I have to do is not resist it to feel the truth of who I am outside of thoughts. And now the awfulness dissolves before the truth of what I am outside of thoughts. So the miracle is how I remember what I am by looking at the world and sin, guilt, and fear with total forgiveness. And the minute in the holy instant I know what I am dissolves the sin, guilt, and fear. I bring it to the quiet center that I am. I bring it to the stately calm. I bring it to the changeless dwelling place of being, which is outside of thoughts, where God has but one Son. This beingness outside of thoughts. That's what forgiveness is about. But it is total surrender. Whatever is happening is perfect for me for this particular batch of sin, guilt, and fear coming up in my mind that my ego wants to blame the world for, but I'm not going to do that. I can sit in the midst of this suffering without stories about it, without saying the world did it to me. The world is showing it to me. And I'm going to sit in it, and I'm not going to have thoughts about it, and I'm not going to tell myself stories about it. I'm going to give it permission to be here. And as I do that, I disidentify from thoughts. There's a presence here, which is the truth of who I am in the Holy Spirit. And as I make my stand here, the sin, guilt, and fear will be dissolved, however long that takes. So forgiveness is how you remember who you are, because grievances block who you are from you. A grievance is how you continue to imagine yourself to be a self that doesn't exist, lacking, needing, suffering, grasping and hating. But there's no one there. That's just the ego thought system. It doesn't apply to anyone. You're already what sees that. But we but see the journey from the point at which it ended, looking back, imagining we make it once again. You're already the light of the world. Now, in this moment, but thoughts want to take you out of this moment where salvation is already done. Heaven is here. There's nowhere else. Heaven is now. There's no other time. How do I know that? Total escape from the past, complete lack of interest in the future. That's all. Well, how do I do that? Disidentify from thoughts, because there is no past or future. They're just a thought. And you're outside of thought. So when through practicing forgiveness, you discover this awareness in your mind, untouchable by thought, you will then learn that there's nothing to thoughts except this awareness that you are. But let's not try and jump steps. Practice forgiveness first. Because in the beginning, we create an artificial separation, because there's no such thing, isn't it? There's no separation. So there is no observer and observed. I'm teaching this and I'm saying to you, the observer is not what is observed. You must, in order to lose a false identification, take this half step. Okay. When you've had this realization that there's an awareness here and there's no separate identity in it, there's no identity in it because that's utterly made out of thoughts. So there is what I am in the Holy Spirit here, totally outside of identity, totally outside of thought identification. From here, it now becomes obvious that there's nothing to thoughts, feelings, stories, bodies, and the world other than this awareness that I am. And that's the collapse of the artificial separation. That's the real world. That's the collapse of the observer and observed delusion, the tiny mad idea of separateness. It's gone. So you may as well know that's coming, but that's not the step we're working on. That's not the step A Course in Miracles is masterclassing, first of all. It's saying, have a look at those thoughts and consider them nothing to do with you, because they're not. And that untangles your identity from thoughts. And now you know what you are outside of thoughts. And then you look at the thoughts and you realize that in terms of content, they're made out of the awareness that you are. But you are utterly unqualified, unchanged, unaffected, unlimited by anything thoughts say. So if we take a big lump of gold and we imagine that it's fashioned into a room full of gold statues, and when gold awakens to itself from the delusion that it's a statue and realizes, no, 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 my identity is gold, it realizes there's nothing to the statue it thought it was and all other statues other than the gold that it is. So all statues are an appearance of gold, but gold isn't qualified or changed or limited in any way by statues. So this is forgiveness. It is about total surrender. Every grievance hurts you because it keeps you from the memory of what you are outside of thoughts. Everything you desire and want to seek after for your salvation can and will hurt you because it's keeping you from your identity outside of thoughts. It's keeping you from now, where the light of the world is. Whatever that apparent mind, because there is no individual mind, but there's an apparent individual mind. In truth, it's just thoughts and the delusion someone is thinking them, but there's no one there. Everything that thoughts are doing is to keep you out of now, to stop you from remembering what you are outside of thoughts, outside of the ego thought system, to know the beingness here, where God is one Son, and to see the world light up with this knowing. Surrender. That's what we're talking about. The world is perfect. I accept that. The world is perfect. If I argue with it, I'm insane because it's already perfect. It has to be like this. So I surrender no matter what's happening. The first thing I do is I surrender because it's perfect. There may be suffering present, but that's perfect. It has to be seen. If I'm serious about awakening, if I'm serious about awakening from the dream of death, the sin, guilt, and fear has to be seen without the world getting blamed for it. That's the way home. That's the way to awaken. So it doesn't matter if the body's falling apart. It doesn't matter if it's World War III. It doesn't matter who's in power. It doesn't matter what everyone thinks of you. All of that is for you. So you can look at the emotions coming up in you, the permutations of sin, guilt, and fear, and not blame the world for them and surrender to them. Total allowing that brings you home to your identity outside of thoughts. And this identity before which all shadows must fall. Forgiveness is how you remember what you are, and the darkness can't stand. It's achieved through surrender. It's achieved by the last thing the ego wants. That's the irony. It's only in total surrender you discover your invulnerability. That's why A Course in Miracles teaches, in my defenselessness, my safety lies. It's only in total surrender I discover the kingdom of beingness here, where there's no death, no separateness. No sin, guilt, and fear. Right, let's throw it open for some questions. So, Linda, would you mind inviting Den to unmute himself?
Is he? Okay.
Thank you, Keith.
Hi, Den.
Um, just a sharing. In 1957, I was on a ship going to Japan, and we left Samak, North Borneo, and there were palm trees floating in the sea. There was no weather radar in those days, and I was on the deck crowd. I was a junior only seaman, and I was spare man between 8 and 12 at night. And we went through, well, I've never seen weather like it before, and seas they were 70 feet high. Um, the front of the ship kept disappearing as it dug its nose in. The third mate blew the whistle, and I went up to the bridge, and he said, "I want you to turn the forward ventilators." And I just looked at him. Anyway, I went down, and all I had was some oilskins and some welly boots and a sou'wester, and all there was two ropes each side of the hatch. And these ventilators had to be turned because the sea was going into the hold, and we were carrying grain, so it's death time. I went round the housing, and I got blown back. And as I said, the front of the ship disappeared, and I stood there shaking with fear. I was a good Christian at that time, and I thought, well, God, if you want me, this is the easiest time to come and get me. So I stood there shaking, and I thought I won't go. Then in my head, I could see the papers, all the papers, the, the press saying Dennis Creamer, Junior Oil Seaman, forgot to, wouldn't turn the ventilators, and 44 souls died. So I decided I'd have to go round, and I stuck my hands up like that, and rather like Kevin Costner did in the film Dances with Wolves. And I went round and I turned the ventilators. I didn't get thrown over the side. I got my feet wet. It went over the top of me welly boots. But doing these ventilators, and at that time, there was something about it. I felt I was in the hands of God, and I had strength, and not very big seas came on board. And I turned the venters and I went back. And I still remember it like it was yesterday. And it was a beautiful experience, but mind you, it was terrifying. But I did say, I'm in your hands.
Beautiful. Um, yeah, beautiful. And this is something that a lot of us will have known at some point in our life, is that something happens which the mind actually just can't process. And the mind sort of gives up in that moment. It throws in the towel. And the minute the mind falls still, the peace of the Holy Spirit, the truth of who you are outside of thoughts, is here. And so, I mean, we live in an age where when a lot of people tend to die, they die with pain relief from morphine and various different things like that. But outside of that, a lot of people die with a smile on their face, because the minute the mind shuts up, the peace that passes all understanding is already here. And it's interesting, when there is this total surrender and the mind shuts up, um, people have been known people have been known to lift a car nobody can lift off someone in an accident. Um, and it's not, I'm not saying that has to be the extension of the miracle every time, because if someone dying in an accident is part of what is perfect, then nothing's going to change that. Okay, but what I am saying is that when the truth of who you are is here outside of thoughts, there will be a response to the needs of the moment that is loving and helpful and guided and knowing. And again, quite apart from lifting impossible weights or anything like that, we've all had times in our life where something happens and it just blows your mind. You just kind of, the mind just stops. But somehow everything just gets done calmly, effortlessly. There's actually almost like a peace here. It's almost like quite a lot of the time, the best view of heaven, and you already are heaven, the best view of heaven is from hell because the mind shuts up. The minute thoughts shut up, or they don't have to, the minute you stop identifying with them, the peace is here. The truth of who you are is here. And everything that happens from here will be loving and kind and helpful and knowing. And it's the only reason that we have people who pursue extreme sports, like rock climbing, like abseiling, like throwing themselves out of airplanes, like ridiculous things that defy any logic. But there is a transcendence which happens in total surrender, in this total helplessness of a situation where the mind shuts up. It sort of it recreates the effect of death that causes people to smile. Is that there is this peace here, this transcendence, this knowing of what I am outside of thoughts, and it's wonderful. And it's what the Course calls resting in God. So I think that description you gave there, Dan, was lovely. Like I was in the hands of God. Well, what you were is you were resting in God. Well, how do I rest in God? Stop identifying with thoughts. You don't have to stop them or get rid of them. They're not you. They've nothing to do with you. Just look on them and don't have thoughts about them. And what's looking? What's looking? What's looking is the light of the world outside of thoughts. Thoughtless awareness that you already are. And from here, you know this to be the truth of everyone else. And from that knowing of shared beingness, everything is kind and helpful and loving and caring. It will be love meeting the requirements of the moment through you. And there'll be no investment in it because peace is already here. I'm not doing something to become peaceful. I'm not doing something to make someone else peaceful. This comes from the recognition of the peace that I already am and that everyone else is. And now there's no investment in it, no seeking and resisting. Everything that happens from here is loving. So lovely. Thank you very much for that story, Dan.
Thank you, Keith.
So Linda, would you mind giving Stacy an invite to unmute herself? Hi, Stacy.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
You may have said this before, but
I say the same thing over and over again.
yeah, you said it in some form or fashion. So, I think that, whether the ego responds first and loudest, and it says that, I shouldn't, I misidentified with thoughts should not be responding the way I am internally or externally. But as you've said, and as the Course says, that, anything that the movie character seems to or says or does means nothing. It's not good or bad, it's unreal.
Mm-hmm.
So we can view anything that any thought, decision, or action that we don't have control over anyway as also perfect, technically,
So
because it's part of the movie.
Yeah. So are you talking about the past? Is that what you mean?
No, I mean, say your experience, like what is apparently happening, maybe between like Stacy and another person.
Mm-hmm.
Any thought, decision, or action that's apparently happening from the perspective of Stacy could be viewed as perfect as well, because we're saying that's part of the movie, the world.
Yeah. So even if it seems like there's been an ego fixation going on, the minute you surrender, something else is here. that's not an ego. And now everything that happens from here will be loving and kind and helpful. So in that sense, even the ego fixation and my noticing of it and my surrendering, so it brought me home to myself. All
Yes.
things work together for good. There are no exceptions.
Okay. I mean, I think that would help also, that little bit of like letting go, because you're saying this is perfect as well.
Surrender to everything because everything's already fine.
Okay.
You surrender to the world because it's perfect for showing you the sin, guilt, and fear coming up in your mind. Now, in order for the sin, guilt, and fear in your mind to be undone, you must surrender to it. Because if you're making a grievance out of it, you can't know who you are. Only in total surrender to all things exactly as they are, which means the world and thoughts and feelings, only in the surrender to all things exactly as they are can you remember what you are as pure beingness outside of thoughts. And now, before the truth of who you are, darkness can't stand. Illusion can't stand. So this is just a method. You know, A Course in Miracles really is a direct path. It says, just be. Go straight to the truth of who you are outside of thoughts, outside of a self-concept that doesn't exist, a concept we've made up out of thoughts. Go straight to that, and no suffering can stand. And the means of coming home to the truth of who I am, outside of the thoughts I've mixed myself up with, is surrender, which is forgiveness. Forgiveness is looking without judgment. Well, that's surrender. It's allowing things to be exactly as they are without having an opinion on them, without making a judgment of them. And
I see how I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I see how one can make a judgment as, oh, this is perfect, this is good. So you also have to let that judgment go.
Yeah, you just surrender to all things being exactly as they are, knowing it has the purpose of forgiveness, awakening from the dream of death. So you don't need an opinion on it.
Yes.
It's just what's apparently happening.
Okay, thank you.
And it couldn't be happening any other way. Couldn't be happening any other way. So it's just what's happening. And the only purpose it has, being an illusion, because the world is an illusion, is to show you the ego fixation in your mind, to show you the sin, guilt, and fear you made up, so it can be undone in the presence of who you really are. And the way you go home to the truth of who you are is total surrender. No fighting the darkness. That's a grievance. You release all grievances with the world, with the voice in your head, with the sin, guilt, and fear. You release all grievances. The minute there's no grievance with what is witnessed, the truth of who you are is here. As presence, as beingness. No self-concept. Pure present moment, I am, is here. Witness to the sin, guilt, and fear, before which sin, guilt, and fear won't be able to stand. So thanks for that.
Thank you.
Marcia. So if you'd like to invite Marcia to unmute herself, then, Linda.
Marcia, do you see that? Oh, let's see.
You should get an invite on the screen, Marcia.
Actually, I think you've given it to me.
Ah, Janet. You gave it to Janet instead.
I was being asked to unmute, so I've unmuted myself.
I'm sorry.
No. I'm cue jumping now.
Well, no, let's.
Now
yeah, we'll come back to you. You can leave Janet unmuted, but do you want to look after Marcia first?
I'm unmuted now.
Good. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, I saw this thing come up, and that's
it's all
why
good. It's all working together.
Okay, good. This is just so very good, as it always is, but it's really, back to what Den was saying, about the kind of being in that moment of, I've had several, like you said, we all have, occurrences where I had nothing to do with the fact that I tripped and fell, and I was headed toward something where I was going to fall into my face, into a metal something, or fall off of a stone wall on my head, or I was in the ocean in a riptide. And it's all been so calm. Something happened and
Yeah.
I never fell.
Yeah.
I was actually in the process of falling, and like it was like something caught me.
Yeah.
And in the ocean, it was like, oh, no problem, just swim sideways. I mean, this is stuff
Yeah. There's a
I'm
calm.
not.
There's a
It's yeah,
calm and a knowing what to do. Yes.
right. I mean, I
That's
slid the
available to
car.
us all the time.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
car slid on ice, and I was going towards a ditch, and a voice had turned into the. I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's beautiful, and I love it. But
Just on that, so hold the next thought, so I
okay,
don't knock it out of
okay,
your mind.
okay.
Just on that,
Mhm.
so Den's story and your story's wonderful. I can tell you the same story of thinking I was going to drown and just going, well, if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And then there was this
Mhm.
absolute peace. So everyone can relate to that. Obviously, I got pulled out in the dream. But everyone can relate to these moments where in extreme danger or in extreme overload, the mind just gives up and a peace comes in. And then there's just a knowingness. Now, having said that, please don't cling to the stories. Don't seek after them as objects
No.
to repeat in a future calendar time where the ego says salvation is. Because what we're saying here is that that's always available to you now through complete and total surrender. So remember, salvation is only ever now.
Now.
When I see it in the past or in the future, that's a lie. So we want to, these events are very helpful so we can anchor in something, but then we want to let them go straight away and focus on now. We don't want
Right.
the mind to keep us in the past with a spiritual experience or to go into the future looking to repeat a past spiritual experience in the future. That's the trap. Again, that's the mind continuing its war with the now.
Okay.
It's the mind keeping us out of where salvation is, which is right here through total surrender. So go ahead, Marcia.
Okay, I actually wrote that down. It's beautiful. The war with now.
Mhm.
It's a war with the present moment.
Yeah.
Oh boy, is that true?
Yeah.
So the other thing is that we talk about over and over the song of prayer and how you don't pray for anything, like you don't pray for your pain to end. I've been practicing this for quite a while, and yesterday was one of those days. It was like one of the darkest. I mean, the pain was so bad, and my mind, I couldn't even stay awake. I'd be reading a book and I would just fall like that. And I thought, well, I I can't do anything about it. Just stay with it. And I'm not like trying to make it go away. So I just wanted to, and you know how you talk about the echo happens? It's like you throw a stone into the river and the ripples, the song of prayer is just what it is. We love God. And we don't expect things. Well, what's happened is are coincidences.
Yes.
My husband plays guitar and he goes for a lesson. His guitar teacher, who already, ironically, coincidentally, has the same guy that's going to do his root canal as me, the same person. I thought, well, that's funny. Then he says, I have a trainer that's really good with people who can't get up off the floor. That's me. So that's fine. I have to be willing to do that. I've suddenly come into some supplements that help nerve pain, that help with synovial fluid, where the Lyme disease has embedded itself. Now, the whole point is not that I heal my body. It's just, and I know that because I'm trying to stay in the moment
Yeah.
with
It's,
what
as you
is.
say, it is an echo. It is the
Yeah,
extension of the miracle of forgiveness and surrender in the dream, and it means nothing. Okay,
it
because
means
because
nothing.
the minute you go, oh, miracles are good, they've changed the
Mm,
world, and this has been my salvation, you're lost.
I know.
You're
I
back
know.
in the dream. You
Yeah.
can't remember who you are. So remember that in the truth of who you are, it is unchanging. it doesn't have highs and lows. It doesn't have highs and lows. So who you are can be fine, whether the pain level stays the way it is forever or whether it diminishes. But who you are is utterly untouched by either.
Right, right.
So we can by all means be present and enjoy extensions of miracles in the dream. We shouldn't make them important. The minute you
Right.
make them important, you're lost. And the minute you
Right.
dictate what the extension should be, you're lost. Because now
Right.
you have the desire that can and will hurt you because it keeps you out of the now where all is
Exactly.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And the other thing is that I've just been so angry with people, places, and things. And I've been, you know, how you said, just shut up. I can't shut up.
Yeah, but you see, you're not angry at places, people, and things. There is
Angry at me.
self-hatred and anger in
I
the ego
know.
thought system,
Oh,
and it's just
it
getting
is.
projected onto a world that means nothing. But that's
It
not
is
failing
so
the course.
ugly.
Yeah, but that's
Oh,
not failing the course. The course says that's going to happen. You're going to project the contents of your mind onto a world that means nothing and say it means things. Okay. And the Course in Miracles is going, we're going to leverage that. It's not saying that's going to stop happening. It's saying
right.
that's going to happen. And this is how you leverage this process of projection for salvation. So all you have to do is go, everyone should have done that so I can see this anger in my mind and have it healed.
Yes, good.
That's
And I do see that. It's just that I get so triggered and I forget everything you've ever said. I just forget the
Okay, so
Holy
let's make it really
Spirit.
easy. The answer is surrender to everything. Let all things be exactly as they are. The minute you do,
Yeah,
you'll remember what you are outside of thought.
right,
Just
yeah.
remember that then. Surrender. All things exactly as they are. Let all
And the
things
other
be
thing,
exactly as they are.
and just one last thing about the past and the present, you know, that whole thing about my Irish background and all this, and I go into the family tree and I look up this one, and I feel like I need to stop doing that because I'm
No, no,
buying
no,
into
no.
the
Oh,
story.
no, no, no. No, you see, because what you're saying is, oh, I'm embracing a concept of the self, and I shouldn't do that. And all you're doing is
Yeah,
just swapping one concept for a new concept.
yeah.
So
So I,
you're beginning by going, oh, this is me making a concept of the self out of myself, so I shouldn't do this. So now I shouldn't do that. They're all concepts.
I know.
So what you want to do is you want to see, look, your mind is doing that. And now your mind
Yeah,
is saying, oh, I can be a holy mind if I don't do it. But none of that's
yeah,
you because
yeah,
they're just thoughts. You're not thinking them. So all
yeah.
you do is you witness the mind with no judgment of it, with no grievance with it, and you feel the truth of what you are outside of the mind's activity, none of which is you. And
Right,
then
right.
and then the mind will begin to soften. The
Mm,
sin, guilt, and
yeah,
fear will soften. All perceptions will soften before
yeah.
the presence of what you are outside of thoughts. So
Beautiful.
don't drop one concept and try and replace it with another concept. Again, of course, Miracle says the only thing you should ask of anything is what is it for?
Mm.
So, as
Yeah,
Shakespeare said, nothing is good or bad, but thinking makes it so.
makes it so. Yeah. I find myself so attracted to the family tree, ancestry.com. So I don't stop doing it. I just notice how special it makes me feel
Yeah, but
by,
feel the truth of who you are and let it extend joyously into the activity of the family tree. Notice, notice where the mind is trying to make itself eternal by people remembering it through a family tree. Notice that and go, aha, here's an ego fixation. Let me just witness that with no judgment of it.
wait, what do I
And that's
notice?
healing your mind.
Wait, I kind of missed that. When I'm doing that, I go, what? How I'm
Here is an ego fixation.
fixation
Here is an identification with the mind.
with the
Oh, I
mind.
need to preserve myself in the family tree so future generations will remember me. That me doesn't exist. So
Okay,
you
yeah,
just notice your invest. All you have to do is notice without judgment.
your investments.
The
Yeah,
simplicity of the Course in Miracles. All you have to look and go, oh, look at this fixation as a separate self. Look at this fixation as a thinker of thoughts, and just and allow it with no judgment, no thoughts about it. That's
I
all you do. All you
I
do
never.
is you bring the darkness to the light. You bring the
The
wrong
light.
mind to the right mind. You bring what the mind is doing to the presence that you are outside the mind. That's all you do.
Right. I never thought of it as a fixation. I mean, that's what I guess it is. I mean, I
Yeah.
love psychology. I just
hmm
never thought of
Well, that's what it is.
that.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah, it's a
it's just an
fixation.
identification with thoughts that's creating a fixation.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's
It only
very
has to be
clear.
witnessed with no judgment. That's forgiveness. Perfect. Thanks,
Perfect.
Marcia.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Fran, we have Becky to go. So
Janet,
we will
actually,
draw.
I accidentally put Janet's hand down, so she's
Oh, right. So
next.
Janet is next. Okay. So we're going to
Yes.
draw a line under the questions now after those three. So Janet, if you're there, I don't see my screen.
Yeah.
If you can unmute
Oh, I
yourself,
am.
Janet, go ahead. And there you are.
I am. Okay. Keith, of course, you said everything over and over again for weeks now. There we are. We're out for breakfast and we're discussing, and I find we're discussing politics, and I'm right in there, right? But understanding that everything's already happened, and I'm looking at it, I'm not able to stop myself from jumping in there and responding to what's happening in the discussion. So I think afterwards, oh damn, I went in right to politics. Should I be, when I become aware that I've jumped in afterwards, say, okay, that is, let it go.
Yeah, this is about total forgiveness. So if at any point you think A Course in Miracles is about beating yourself around the head around the house with A Course in Miracles, you're doing it wrong. A Course in Miracles is simple. I mean, because first of all, the minute that's happened, is it anything other than a story?
No.
It's just a story.
Right.
And it means nothing. So so this is never about I should feel guilty for failing, because there's no failure. There's no one there to fail.
Right.
That's just a story about no one, because there's only the present moment. So have you ever actually experienced the past?
No.
Have you ever been in the past?
No.
Have you ever
Always.
experienced the future?
No. No,
Have
it's
you ever
always
been
the
in the
mind.
future?
No.
So all that's happening is engagement with thoughts ever.
Right.
And you are always what is here now in this moment. Heaven is here, there is nowhere else. Heaven is now, there is no other time. Everything else is thoughts. You just got to recognize them in thoughts and go, but they're just thoughts. What am I in now? Because what you are is outside of thoughts. Thoughts are made out of you, but they have no effect on you. Just like the whole world's made out of you. You're the dreamer of the dream. You're the mind in which the whole world is happening, and everyone and everything in it, including the imaginary person you think you are. You are the one consciousness within which it's all happening, by which it's known and out of which it's made. In other words, you are the now. That's why the ego's war is with the now. And that's why the Holy Instant is now. Because in the Holy Spirit, you are the now. And the now is just appearing as past, present, and future. But it's all now. And you're only ever in the now. So we never want our course practice to be about guilt and recrimination and autopsies. It's never about that. No. So, when that's happened, the only thing the course is saying is go back to who you are, rest in God. That's all it's saying. If you start having a grievance with yourself over the mistake that you've made, which is just a story, but if you hold a grievance with that, you can't go back and rest in God. The grievance blocks the memory of what you are. That's why it's a course in undoing grievances. If there's no grievances, there's no ego. If there's no ego, you are the light of the world now. And you already are. It's shining in your mind in this moment. If you're overlooking it temporarily, whatever, it doesn't change the fact that you already are the light of the world and that there's no separate self there. It's made out of thoughts and the delusion someone's thinking them, but that's just another thought. There's no one there. You're the now. Does that make sense?
It makes sense, and I'll try to
Good.
remember.
Yeah.
Thank you, Keith.
So whenever we feel guilty or like a failure with our course practice, we've gone off track. We've missed the point that this is a course in miracles, and miracles is forgiveness, the absence of grievance. Perfect. So if you wanted to, Linda, invite Fran to unmute.
Hey, Fran, are you there?
Hi, Fran.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, everybody. Keith, I've been listening to your podcasts on the YouTube app, the recording, because I have to, it gives me time to write everything down and oh wait, I missed that. But anyway, this phrase, it should be thus, is a freedom pause. It's actually absolutely my gateway to freedom.
Yeah.
And so I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah.
And I don't, this now thing, this that the ego is only and always at war with the present moment.
And it's not you,
so
just thoughts.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And so when that discomfort comes up, it should be thus.
Mm-hmm.
And
the world should be thus to see this discomfort, because it's the discomfort of thinking
exactly.
I'm an ego. Yeah. Exactly.
And so with my practice more and more, this stuff is so real and so wonderful and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so what I've noticed with my practice more recently is there are times when I've had this kind of undoing, this peace return, this,
Mm-hmm.
relinquishing,
Mm-hmm.
not fighting now. And there's a restlessness and a little boredom that comes up.
Good.
Okay.
That's the mind's defenses. Because what we're saying is nothing the mind is doing is you. You are silence and stillness of being in this moment. That is the truth of who you are. As you approach the silence, the mind has no alternative or option. Remember, the activity of the mind is not you. They're just thoughts. It's an ego thought system. The mind has no option but to interpret that as death. And it is the death of the mind, okay? And so the mind will interpret that as death. So what you're experiencing is restlessness and boredom. That's where the mind begins. That's where thoughts begin, right? With restlessness and boredom. It's like, you could be doing something else. You should really do something else. This is a bit of a waste of time. Now, if you persist, the thoughts will step up their game. And you may have thoughts like, if you keep doing this, you're going to become useless to your family. If you keep doing this, you'll die. If you keep doing this, you're not ready for this. You shouldn't do this now. You should wait until a better time. And so these are the mind's defenses. Okay. Now, for some people, this can be a visceral fear of death that comes up. And that's why in the Course, Jesus says, you will be so tempted to abandon him, the Holy Spirit, at the outside ring of fear. Because what we're talking about here is a boundary or a barrier. And once you pass through out of Wonderland into the Holy Spirit's perception, there's no going back. Because when you cross that, if you stick with the fear, if you go, well, yeah, fear is here, I will allow it without thoughts about it. I'm going to be here and not judge it. I'm not going to have a grievance with it. I'm going to have it, let it be seen. Then you will pass over a boundary, which is awakening. Because at that point, you will absolutely see the illusion of identity, that it's made out of thoughts, that there was never anyone there. There's just thoughts. And the silence that's here is the being that's here is the truth of who you are. So that's a point of no return. So yes, it's very important to understand there is an outside ring of fear, which is the mind's defenses. It doesn't mean anything. It's perfectly harmless. Again, forgiveness brings me everything I want. You simply, if boredom comes up, you sit with the discomfort of that. If restlessness comes up, sit with the discomfort of it rather than going to the magic, which is if I do something, the restlessness will go away. Because the restlessness is not caused by a need to do something. The restlessness is caused by sin, guilt, and fear. That's just a projection. So, the mind will say, go watch a Netflix show. See? And if you don't, then there's going to be a restlessness here and a kind of a buildup of tension. And you see, sit with that. So yes, thanks for that. That's an important question, Fran. Yes, there is an outside ring of fear. It's nothing. You just forgive it. You sit in the fear because you won't die because you can't die. But the mind, which isn't you, it's a concept of a self. It's an artificial intelligence. It's nothing. The mind interprets it as death, but the silence will awaken to itself, and that's who you are. Yeah.
Wow.
So
okay. There's some tears back there, and I knew
that's always a good sign.
Yeah. Well, I knew that I was hitting something.
Yeah.
And it's come, and I run from it, and all that.
No, good question.
Okay.
Because everyone's going to encounter some version of that. Well, when I'm working with clients, I love lesson 70, and now we will try again to find the light in you, which is where your salvation is. It's not in the thoughts, the clouds, and that's where you've been looking for it. It's beyond the thoughts, but in the light beyond. And so, but remember that you must go through the clouds, the thoughts, to get to the light of the being that you are. So that means you sit here and you go, well, what am I as the light? And clouds will come in and go, oh, you're this and you're that. And you have to catch them. And when you think you're thinking them, because no one's thinking them, you have to catch them and go, they're just thoughts. What am I is stillness. Now, the stillness where there's no language, where there's no words. What is that? And more clouds will come in and go, oh, you are the Holy Spirit. You are presence. Oh, you are the silence. But remember, they're not true because there's no language in the stillness. You just go, what am I is stillness. So I recommend that to all my clients. I think it's a gold standard practice, lesson 70, to do that. But as you're doing it, it's very likely that restlessness, boredom, fear, and even the visceral fear of death may come up to keep you. Because again, the mind is at war with it's determined to keep you out of the present moment. And so it'll pull out all the stops, and you just got to cross the boundary, the outside ring of fear, through forgiveness, by complete surrender. Thanks, Fran. That was great.
I was feeling that even labeling it as restlessness and boredom.
Yeah, no, you see, because perfect, yes. Because ultimately what we want to do is bring it to the presence that doesn't label.
Okay.
You see, because remember, the truth of who you are, there's no labeling going on here. There's no thinking going on here. So that's why we say that with forgiveness, you look on sin, guilt, and fear, and you don't have thoughts about it. So you're quite right. You don't call it anything. You come home to the truth of who you are through surrender. You look without thoughts, without stories about what you're looking at, without labeling it. So absolutely right, Fran. Yes.
Okay, one of the things I do just quickly when I'm in that place and I know I'm about to try to avoid something that I want to sit with, I say, and I'm asking, is this a trap? I say, I choose the strength of Christ to do this, and I just let it go. I just keep sitting.
Perfect. If that works for you, great. Just don't make the words into magic words, because words are nothing.
Right.
The words are a separate device. Now, they can be very helpful. Right-minded words are helpful to, like a right-minded word or concept. It's a thorn, because salvation is nothing more than the escape from concepts. But it's a thorn to remove a thorn. So we use a right-minded concept to address or unstick or undo a wrong-minded concept. But then the trick is we let both concepts go and we come home to the beingness.
Okay.
Perfect.
So okay. Thank you.
So by all means, let words happen that are a signpost back to the place outside of words. So that's perfectly fine. Just don't, because the mistake people make is they start making love to the concepts and the words. That
Right. No
you just
mantras. No.
absolutely no. There's no magic words.
Okay.
They're just the best. The holiest purpose words can have is as a signpost outside of words.
Okay.
Yeah.
I say it with the thought that I am not Fran, and I can't do it at the Fran level, so that it helps me bump up, like, this is Holy Spirit in my mind.
Yeah.
This is the work.
Yeah.
So that kind of loosens the Fran concept.
That's,
okay. Thank you.
that's it. And then drop the right-minded concept just as quickly as the wrong-minded concept. Forget this.
Wow.
Forget this world. Forget this course, and come with holy empty hands unto your God. Keep nothing.
Yeah, that's usually a giant howl at the moon, but okay.
Perfect. Great. So, Becky, Linda's going to invite you to take yourself off. Oh, yeah, I think you're off. Go ahead.
Okay. I think you've answered the question in the last two responses.
No problem. Well, I don't mind doing it again. It's the same thing over and over again.
I think that has been my issue throughout my life, and issues that really bother me. Because a terrible event occurs. In the moment, you have total acceptance, surrender, and it does solve whatever the issue is at the time. It really works. But I think where I'm coming in, it's after it's over, I start reviewing it. Then you start with disappointment, self-betrayal, failure. And now I realize you've said this, but that's the result of my strong identifications with world concepts. So my solution in surrendering is to recognize that it's just a mechanism of my mind coming in. It's hard, but it's that where I'm falling down. Because I've been trying for years.
Okay, well,
over one event.
Disappointment, embarrassment,
self-betrayal.
Self-betrayal. What are they?
Concepts that I probably have been taught, but they're coming from
but even
ego.
there's no one there that was taught them. They're just thoughts that are happening. They don't belong to anyone. You are the one consciousness that is dreaming the entire world right now in this moment. And thoughts are moving through the consciousness that you are. Now, because there's a delusion, I am the thinker of these concepts, it seems like you're a separate self. But there are no separate selves. So again, what you want to understand, they're just concepts are nothing. They're nothing. And all you have to do is realize that you aren't bound by concepts. And all you have to do is witness concepts without concepts about them. And immediately, what you are outside of concepts is apparent. Now, you might have to go through the clouds. You might have to catch that you're still thinking you're thinking. And you just catch that and you just witness with no judgment. Those are just thoughts. Those are just concepts. What am I? What is the witness to concepts that's not bound by them? And you just keep coming home here. And in the beginning, if you can only spend 2 seconds here, that's great. That's gold in the bank. That's a footstep back to heaven. Okay. Each time you exit the delusion of thinking you're thinking, each time you touch on the truth outside of thoughts, it fundamentally shifts everything. So this is never about, oh, look how many times I fall down. Oh, I'm such a bad course student. That's crap. It's every time you get up is gold in the bank. It doesn't matter how many times you fall down. Each time you catch it and go, oh, I thought I was thinking. Actually, those are just thoughts, and they mean nothing, and they've nothing to do with me. What am I? As witness to these thoughts with no judgment of them. Each time you touch into the truth of who you are outside of thoughts and the Holy Spirit, it's healing your mind in ways you cannot even know.
Okay.
So,
do you know, just an aside, remember you say with Descartes, I bought the statue in my early 20s. I bought into it so much. And you got to think your way out of issues.
Yes.
When I retired, I got rid of the statue.
Very good.
So that was a good thing. All right.
Let me come back to the first part of what you said, just to clarify something, because what you said was in that total surrender, everything gets sorted. Now, I want to qualify that and say, in that total surrender, there is no suffering, or whatever suffering is there.
There's total acceptance.
Yes. Whatever suffering is there will be undone by the presence of who you are when there's no seeking and resisting. When the mind shuts up. So in the that
mind
sense,
again.
Yeah. So in that sense, there is no suffering. So which means there is no problem. Now, it doesn't mean the world has to happen a certain way and I can go, oh, that was resolved. So the point I want to make is that, at the crucifixion, total allowing of what is, total non-judgment of what is meant that there was no suffering there for anyone, because we're talking about Jesus. So there was no suffering there for anyone, but it goes deeper than that. There was no one there to suffer. There was no one there to be crucified. So again, we never want to look towards form. That's what I was saying to Marcia in terms of there will be extensions of the miracle, but they're totally unpredictable and not under conscious control. So the point was that it doesn't mean crucifixion won't happen. It does mean there's no one to be crucified because I know who I am and it can't be crucified.
Yep.
So, perfect. Thank you very much for that, Becky.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Guys, thank you very much for your attention today. I hope you got something useful out of it. We will catch up in the Facebook group during the week. Quick announcement about next Sunday. We will not have our normal podcast episode or Zoom meeting on Sunday because I will be chatting with your Uncle John Mundy on his podcast. So I will share the link for that in the Facebook group. And if you're watching on YouTube, I will put the link to join us live next Sunday, my conversation with John, if you'd like to join us. So guys, enjoy your Sunday. Thank you very much.